This is the most requested video since I started my YouTube channel, and I was never interested in making it. It's difficult not because I'm engaging with my emotions, but because I'm expected to extrovert my feelings. I'm explaining my emotions to the world. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't enjoy doing that. I don't like talking about my feelings. But I recently just got out of a relationship with an INFJ, and this topic has been on my mind for the past few weeks. I think that this is a valuable video that I think a lot of you might enjoy. Since I'm in my FI fields right now, I want to get a few things off my chest. And the primary reason why I'm making this video is because there are lots of horrible videos about INTJ and dating. Most of those videos are made by mistyped INTJs that aren't even helpful and are just full of spite or just someone just complaining about shit. The mistypes would say something hurtful or purposely be mean about someone they dated and then make a face to the camera like, look at how mean I am because I'm an INTJ. That's not how it works. Being mean or cynical isn't an actual INTJ trait, especially a heartbroken INTJ. Having introverted feeling in our third function stack means it's very, very difficult for someone to get to that point in our life, which also means that it's just as difficult for us to think negatively about them without acknowledging their strength or how they contributed to the relationship. They're just as beautiful even if we hate them. We'll acknowledge our differences and our toxicity towards each other, but it's not very hateful unless it's the beginning of the breakup, at which point the INTJs probably just emotionals are out of control and they're talking out of their ass. But an INTJ won't make a video at that point. I hope you all notice it the next time you watch a mistyped INTJ where they would make a face to the camera after they say something edgy just to be edgy because they think that's what an INTJ would do. One of the sad truths of being an INTJ is that we're going to be seen as edgy just for breathing. Anything I do is going to be considered edgy. To start off this video, I want to talk about when I was a teen and in my early 20s, I thought relationship was like everything else. That I could read a few articles on it, memorize a few things, understand the big concept of everything, and would be able to perform it as an expert without putting in much practice. But I'll be the first to admit that I was completely wrong, and that the learning process is honestly by doing it yourself, sometimes to get your heart broken. I also had this long and extensive list of the perfect person, but now as an adult with enough experience, I realized that that perfect person doesn't exist. And even if that person existed, that person wouldn't be interested in me. And I wouldn't deserve that person. That person would be the perfect person. She deserves to be with whomever she wants to be. When I was younger, I also fell into the trap that I believe most teenagers or young adults fall into, that they expect their partners to be everything for them. I expected the person I was with to be my best friend, my partner in crime, my ride or die, my therapist, and every other relationship bond that you can have with someone else. That's unfair. That's an unfair expectation to have from your partner because they're just one person. This video is about my own personal experience as an INTJ, currently in my mid-30s, trying to find my forever person. Being an INTJ, I've always been aware of how difficult it is to date or maintain a relationship because extroverted feeling is my blind spot. That's something I don't really think about. The more I learn about MBTI, the more I realize it's because of my cognitive functions. The combination of my dominant function, introverted intuition or NI, and my secondary function, extroverted thinking or TE, doesn't provide much comfort unless the other person is able to read between the lines or unless they're used to those functions. And I will continue to seek innovative ways to approach life and seek novel experiences, and extroverted thinking will continue to improve every aspect of our lives, including our relationship. You're in a relationship with someone that's constantly on the go, constantly reevaluating the relationship and constantly trying to switch things up to see if things get better. Even if things are as close to perfect as possible, I'm still going to seek new ways of improving it because there's always something better. I'm aware that none of that sounds comforting. Having FI in my third function makes it extremely difficult not only for me to vocally express how I'm feeling, but most of the time, I'm not even sure how I feel in the moment. Difficult but very necessary discussion that has to do with emotions are usually handled through a TE logical mindset, when the correct path is experienced it through FI, because you'll find yourself in a situation where you chose the path that might be the most efficient way towards solving the relationship issue, only to have that small sense of doubt whether you agree with that solution. That small sense of doubt is introverted feeling. And FI will start off small, but will eventually become a fast-moving train that crashes into you when you realize that the optimal solution doesn't align with your FI value. You can't ignore introverted feeling. INTJs, you can't ignore introverted feeling. Having FI in our third function also makes us want to avoid dealing with too much emotions. I'm the most confident person in the room almost all the time, but the moment I feel too much emotions, I feel like I need to leave. I need to withdraw. That's when I start becoming self-conscious. And the emotions are varied and doesn't have to be shyness, embarrassment, or anything negative. It's every sort of emotion. Positive emotion, negative emotions, everything in between. The last thing is having extroverted sensing in our fourth function makes it difficult to meet people. Because I don't go outside unless I have a reason to. Because my home, or whatever I call home base, is my sanctuary. The other side of having SE in our fourth slot that isn't talked about much is it feels fake. My ESFP friend called me out on this, and he said I acted differently depending on the group that I'm around. And I'm aware of that. I'm aware I do that. Because I don't want too much attention on me, so I try my best to blend in. My core value remains intact, but I'm just putting up the most efficient persona to handle the social situation. I noticed that this is the same approach when I take to dating sometimes. When things aren't going well during the date, I approach it with extroverted sensing, and two results happen. I either lose interest in that person because they're interested in a suboptimal or fake version of me, or they lose interest when I start talking like my normal INTJ self. They're like, who is this person? Which leads to the story of my love life. Or better yet, the story of the lack of love in my life. Because I suck at dating. I'm 35 fucking years old and I'm still single. You thought being single during your teenage years was rough? You thought being single in your 20s was rough? Try being single in your 30s, because dating is completely different. Your dating pool consists of people who want to start a family immediately, people who are recently divorced, people who have kids who are recently divorced, and people who won't even talk to you unless they believe you're financially stable. And not financially stable in your eyes, but financially stable in their eyes. There is nothing wrong if you're a person that falls into any of those categories. That's just the reality of my current dating pool. And it's been like that for a while now. Also, there are a lot more things that need to be considered before dating compared to dating in my earlier years. I miss the days when the toughest thing about a relationship is figuring out where to park the car, because college campuses always charge for roadside parking. There's so much more to consider now. Now you have to start considering real life shit. Health issue is becoming more common amongst your peers, and you feel your own body start deteriorating. I shit you not, I would just get up and then my back would just hurt for no reason. I'm at that age where my parents are considering retirement, so I have to figure out how we're going to care for them, who's going to take care of them, and how much is financially going to cost me. The conversation of wanting kids is a must in the beginning, because for ladies, there's a lot more health risks for the child and for the mother if they have kids at a later age. And for dudes, it's almost impossible to switch careers, because that means taking a pay cut, and ladies at this age don't want to date a guy who isn't financially stable or who doesn't already have the career lined up. But not everything is negative, and this is where my INTJ-ness comes in. As an INTJ, I need a person that can be independent, and most women around my age are independent regardless of type. Ladies in their 20s, most of them aren't independent. People in our 30s are typically better with setting boundaries, which is a huge positive, because then you won't get blindsided out of the blue a few years later because that person thought you would change with time. People in our 30s have a more realistic expectation of a partner. Also, there's typically a mutual understanding that a relationship is a partnership, and that gender roles doesn't really matter as much in a successful relationship, and that love isn't the only thing that makes a relationship successful. The younger generation usually calls that settling. I did as well. But now I realize that it's actually being realistic, and it's a core part of a successful relationship. Well, all that said, the expectation of dating just sucks in general, not just for an INTJ. But do you see this persona right now? How loud and animated I am? I'm like this around people that I'm familiar with, people that I trust, or when I'm in a room all by myself. I can't naturally be like this with a person that I don't know. I have to meet that person over a dozen times. or after a dozen shots. And most people or most dates don't go past the first or second date. I naturally have to hold back my NI because I'm aware of how crazy NI sounds to most people. Because when I meet a person who doesn't small talk and go straight to NI, I think they're crazy too. For example, a lady will tell me her favorite color is blue, and my instinct is to naturally ask, why is your favorite color blue? Or when I notice a pattern and be like, oh, it sounds like your favorite color is blue because it reminds you of home because yada, 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 because you said this and you said this, tying a bunch of patterns together. That's such a normal question or insight for me to understand, just understand why. But I wish I took a picture of all the faces I receive asking those questions. From faces like, are you dumb? To faces like, why are you trying to psychoanalyze me? I can't help it. You have my attention, so I will naturally notice these things. I also want to express that I'm single by choice. I would much rather be single than be in a relationship with someone that I don't see a positive future with. Jay-Z said it best in one of his songs when he apologized for cheating on Beyonce, and I felt it to my core. He said, I don't even know what I would have done in the future, another dude playing football with my son. I hope I marry the person I have kids with and that we stay together forever, because that's something I hope I never have to go through. And until I meet that person, I will happily stay single. I'm aware that I'm a social INTJ, and I'm aware that I've dated more than most. But it's all by design. I spent decades building this personality to where it's just me naturally now. I was raised in a huge family where I learned early on, in order to get my alone time, I have to learn how to navigate through the social landscape. I have to be social, and then I get my alone time. I was also so heartbroken after my first relationship failed that I told myself that I need to have more experience in dating so that it doesn't happen again. I don't want to get heartbroken again. But no matter how social I become, a few things remain true. The first truth that I realized is that I love my alone time. I love it too much sometimes. I read this quote a long time ago, and I'm paraphrasing it because I can't find it anymore because I'm not remembering the words properly. But it goes something like this. To win my affection, you're not competing against anyone. Instead, you're competing against my love of silence. You have to be the same, if not better, than my love of being alone. I feel like most introverts can relate to this quote. Being alone with my thoughts is my happy place. I was in a situationship with an ENFP during and a little after COVID. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what she saw in me. We met on Tinder, and during our first date, I purposely said shit to get an emotional response from her. True to her ENFP nature, she's very into the SJW movement, where she's in law school right now, and I could see her being the next RBG. And RBG stands for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a badass Supreme Court justice that finished law school while she was raising a child, and was one of the justices that spearheaded law reforms promoting women's rights. She's a badass. So I dated 3 ENFPs, potentially 4. And they all did something that was unique to them because they were the only extroverts that I dated. When I told them that I needed to recharge, they would sit and wait for me. Like literally sit there and stare at me like a puppy or a dog would do to their owner. Most introverts are aware of this. We don't immediately start recharging. We have to get to a certain mental state for it to even begin. This moment happened with every single one of them. That's why I'm pointing this out. I would play a quick match of Call of Duty or something, and when the round was over, I would turn around and see them sitting there with the biggest smile on their face, just staring at me. And they would always ask, "Are you done recharging?" They're just waiting for my attention. No, I'm not done recharging. We just spent the past 3 days together. I need way more time. That match was just the appetizer. I need way more to be ready to engage with people again. And sadly, that also means you. I'm not knocking on ENFPs because for myself personally, and I hate being stereotypical, but I believe that I have an itch that only an ENFP can scratch. And on a side note, I'm always wary of providing compliments to an ENFP because when I do, your eyes starts twinkling and I have to prepare myself for a barrage of emotions when all I wanted to do was just compliment you on something and nothing more. But you guys have to extrovert your feeling or extrovert your intuition towards me. It was a very difficult balance because the amount of attention that the ENFP wanted was a lot more than I was able to provide, which led to a lot of feeling of resentment because I felt like she was being too needy, and she felt like I wasn't providing enough attention. Now that I understand cognitive functions, it makes sense why we felt that way. ENFPs have extrovert intuition, or NE, as their dominant function, so they want to extrovert their intuitive thoughts, whereas INTJs have NI as their dominant function, so we need time to think about it. So a lot of times, it's just me listening and agreeing with whatever her thoughts are on something until I feel like they're going towards the wrong path, or they just have incorrect information. But sometimes, listening gets tiresome. Not having time to think is one of the worst feelings in the world. This is when I become the worst version of myself because I lose control. Sometimes my vision literally gets cloudy and I become an NPC just standing there. I can't see anything. I'm just standing there. It's similar to just being tired, but just mentally. My brain shuts down. My motor function takes a hit. And sometimes I speak straight gibberish. Someone will ask me to pass a red crayon and I would give them the purple crayon because there's a lag in what's being said and how I'm interpreting things because I have so much that I need to think about. To summarize this portion of the video, dating is difficult because it forces me to engage the world in a manner that just isn't natural to me because dating is an extroverted sport and I'm the most comfortable being introverted. The second lesson that I learned was the toughest life lesson I ever received. The lesson is that not everyone is comfortable with my NI, and that NI can be a deal breaker, and there's nothing I could do about it. There were only 2 ladies that I dated that I thought I could spend the rest of my life with, and they were both SI DOMs. The first one was an ISFJ, and the second one was an ISTJ. These 2 relationships hurt me the most, but it also made me grow the most as a person because I had to reevaluate who I was. For this video, I'm only going to mention the ICJ because it was the more recent relationship. She was this red-headed Mormon tsundere. Tsundere is the Japanese word to describe a certain character trope that starts off with a harsh demeanor but starts revealing a warmer, friendlier side over time. You know, person that initially you're like, what the fuck? And you're like, oh, they're actually a softie. Typical ISTJ. And she's the reason why I continue to admire ISTJ so much. Both the INTJ and ISTJs are known in the community to have the get shit done attitude, which we do. But don't forget, the extrovert thinking is our second function. We still have to consciously engage with extroverted thinking. It was nice to have a partner that could be relied on without asking. She would pick up my slack when I wasn't feeling 100%, and it worked the other way around as well. Just because we have extroverted thinking high in our stack doesn't mean that we don't enjoy being taken care of. It just means that we're less hesitant to take an action if it needs to get done. We both really appreciated the other person's act of kindness. She enjoyed it when I took out the trash, and I enjoyed it when she reminded me to buy Christmas presents for the people that I care about. The other aspect of the relationship that is commonly overlooked is the placement of our introverted feeling. We both have introverted feeling, or FI, in our third function stack. There's a quote that I think best describes our relationship. Tears are the words that the heart can't express. We were both able to communicate our emotions without words. It was felt through our actions and physical touch. Words matter so little when our actions did all the talking. And when tears were involved, nothing else needed to be said. The ISTJ and ISFJ are the only 2 people that ever made me live in the moment. A water droplet would stay suspended in midair and I would be able to move freely around it. What would feel like a minute of embrace would equate to 15 minutes of time passing by. And what felt like an afternoon together would actually be an entire weekend. It felt so good to be in the moment. I know that living in the moment is associated with extrovert sensing, but only introverted sensing DOMs were able to make me engage with it. They're the reason why I know what love feels like. For a short moment in time, they made me feel human. I noticed that I'm personally attracted to SI DOMs because there's this aura about them that's different, but feels oddly familiar at the exact same time. The ISTJ knew I was lost in thought before I did, because as an INTJ, being lost in thought is the most natural state I could be in. It would always be such a surreal experience when I'm just sitting there and out of the blue, she would be like, stop thinking. And I would just laugh because she's usually right. She just knew I was thinking. I didn't even know I was thinking, and she saw it. My conflict with both of them arose due to the conflict between NI and SI. It is not the part of NI or SI that has to do with planning. It's the part of NI and SI when it comes to feeling comfortable. For the ISTJ, we both enjoy structure. We both have extroverted thinking, and that's something that we value. But my NI is always seeking something new, whereas our SI is comfortable without change. And that led to a lot of issues. Something as simple as not booking a hotel by a certain time would stress her out. But for me, I didn't want to book something unless I know absolutely that that's where we want to be. One of the last conversations we had was her asking me this piercing question. You're never going to stay still, are you? I didn't know it at the time, but I ended our relationship with a single word. That word still haunts me till this day. I responded back to her question with the word never. And I'm going to go a little NI tangent right now. I believe in multiple dimensions, that there are infinite versions of myself playing out infinite different timelines. Sometimes, I know it sounds weird, but sometimes I'm jealous of the version of myself that responded differently, because that version of John is probably married to her and potentially raising kids that this version of me, that this reality will never get the chance to meet. It's such a shitty feeling, and I know I'm never going to get over it. But what I learned from that relationship is the famous quote from Star Trek. It is possible to commit no mistake and still lose. That is not weakness. That is life. You know, we'll meet people throughout our lives that have tremendous impact on us, improving us in so many ways that we didn't think was possible or needed, and yet not be a part of our life forever. It's always tough thinking back at that relationship, but I'm happy it happened because now I know that I can't be with someone who doesn't value my NI. Because as an INTJ, I am NI. I said this in my video about ISFJs, and I still mean it. SI DOMs, the ISFJ, and the ISTJs are usually the girls that I have googly eyes for because they have a certain aura to them that I find super attractive. The best quote to summarize my feeling about SI Dom is from this early 2000 movie, Wicker Park. The quote goes, when you see something from afar, you develop a fantasy. But when you see it up close, 9 times out of 10, you wish you hadn't. I'll continue to admire them from afar. The third lesson I learned has to do with the INTJ's cognitive function, extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking is the cognitive function the INTJs are proud of the most. Unlike introverted intuition, which is our dominant function, extroverted thinking takes just enough effort to engage with where we know we're not the best at it, but we also know we're great at it, but we're also aware that there's enough room for improvement where we'll continue to get better. It also makes us accomplish so much things that are tangible in the real life that we can show off, and sometimes we like showing off. Which brings me to a relationship that I had with an INFP. I dated 2 INFPs, but I'm only going to mention one of them in this video. Our chemistry started in chemistry class in college. She's a typical INFP, very shy and reserved when she doesn't know you, but will roast you when she's close to you. She feels intensely about certain topics and cares so much about helping people, but she didn't have a way or any means for that to be an outlet, so she would cry about that. I will always recommend the INTJ INFP pairing because there's so much room for growth if both partners are mature. It just happened that while I was dating them, I wasn't mature, nor were they. You will never hear me say that I don't have red flags or that I'm the best partner because I'm aware of my shortcomings and I'm so aware of my flaws. But what I'm also aware of is the effort that I put into a relationship. There are times when I'm 100% the red flag. I'm aware of that. I know I do shit that I shouldn't be doing, but I did it. But there are also relationships where I know I'm not the one wrong, but there's no reasoning with an INFP's FI. Something that I noticed that's common with feelers that isn't a common thing amongst thinkers. Feelers will quickly label an action with whatever the popular psychological buzzword is to describe the action of someone that they don't like. Words such as toxic, gaslighting, whatever the attachment styles are, and every word in the dictionary. I'm not saying that those words aren't real because I personally believe that they are. What I'm saying is that feelers are more quick to default to those words when they're describing someone when they're in a bad mood. And that was the problem with the INFP. Society will quickly praise extroverted feeling and demonize extroverted thinking because there's this misconception that extroverted feeling cares more, which isn't true. And I'm aware the INFPs have extroverted thinking too, but just bear with me real quick. Extroverted thinking cares about people just as much, if not more, than extroverted feeling does, but we show it in our own way. And sometimes it shows up by us fixing problems. The INFP had a lot of issues, but the problem that put a lot of strain onto our relationship was her loose grip of extroverted thinking. She would have all these plans, ideas, insecurities, or fears throughout the day that she would express to me. And the default mode for a TE user is to fix the problem so that the issue is gone. I didn't learn until it was too late that sometimes she just wanted to vent, and all I needed to do was just listen. But what she never considered is how it affected me as a person listening to all her complaints, some that can easily be solved. One of the most difficult thing to do as a high TE user is to hear someone complain about the same problem over and over again if the problem can easily be fixed. Sometimes I feel like people would just enjoy playing the victim. It becomes a problem when I'm tired or respond as natural as possible without noticing, because my response is very TE heavy, and TE sounds very harsh if you're not ready for it. Why do you keep doing this if you know it's going to lead to this issue? When I responded with extroverted thinking, boy, did I learn so many words that are used in psychology to describe a negative partner or a negative person. I would be called a robot, uncaring, unloving, narcissistic, sadistic, and a bunch of other words in the dictionary. Because she felt like I was attacking her, and then I would have to spend the rest of the time making her emotionally stable again. And the worst part is that I wasn't able to leave the situation either to gather my thoughts before I engaged with her, because if I decided to leave, then she would automatically assume that I don't love her anymore, or I'm not putting effort into the relationship, so it's a lose-lose situation. This relationship didn't last long because, similar to the cognitive function and I can't help but engage the world with extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking is my first extroverted function, so it's the function that I'm going to use as the default and what I'm going to be known for in the beginning when I meet someone, so she should be aware of this. I learned after this relationship that I need someone that can handle feedback and won't take things personal when I'm not paying attention to my words, because my words will hurt occasionally, and my partner needs to know that there's no malicious intent to it. That's just the way my mind operates, and I'm aware that I'm being hurtful, but I'm not trying to be, because I will consciously not try to be. The ability to handle that isn't a type-specific thing. It just has to do with maturity. And I believe that any type can learn that. I still have crushes on INFPs all the time, but I have to test their emotional intelligence or emotional stability before I start opening up to them. I've said this before in my previous video, but I am terrified of introverted feeling. The fourth and final lesson that I want to go over in this video is that I can't ignore my FI, no matter how much I try. And this is where the INFJ comes into play. For some reason, the past 3 people that I've dated were all INFJs. All 3 of them didn't work out, and all 3 of them didn't work out for the exact same reason. They ignored my FI. Being around another NI Dom is a marvelous feeling. I can't express how good it feels to be around someone who just gets it and can navigate a topic to the same level of depth that I can. To be understood at a certain level, and the ability to explain myself and not get the deer in headlights look because I'm going too deep into NI. The mutual understanding that we're the odd ones in society and that we're no longer alone because we have each other. That's such a good feeling to not feel alone. The nice feeling that we don't really have to do much to have a good time. There's no need to constantly plan out the weekend or to leave the house if we don't want to. We can enjoy the evening with just the 2 of us. That staying home and watching a show together or talk about our interests is more than enough to be an enjoyable weekend. Also, the ability to just be silent around each other because it's not awkward, because the other person is just as comfortable being silent around you. We also have that natural first conversation where we talk about our potential future together without the other person feeling weirded out. It's just natural for NI. And there's the most overlooked quality of dating another introvert, that we're both okay with the other person needing space. It's honestly the most natural relationships that I've been in, and that's why it happened to me 3 times. But now I definitely notice a pattern. The issue is that my FI value keeps being ignored. At my core, the people, places, or things in my FI means more to me than the world, and I will sacrifice humanity if it means the people in my FI are safe. Every other type that I dated understood that part of me and have accepted it. Even the INFP I mentioned earlier, who is an FI Dom, and FI Doms are known to be illogical. She knows when to let go of a conversation when my FI is being activated. Not because she was afraid of me or scared of me, but because she respected it. It feels good for my FI to be valued. I don't expect FE users to fully understand what it means to have FI, but I expect my partner to listen. I noticed that the INFJs paid attention to my feelings up until the point where we're steadily dating, or at the point where we're a couple. Because at that point, we're essentially a single unit. So what happens is that they would either start engaging with their FI, which they're not good at, and start becoming more selfish, ignoring my feelings, or start ignoring my feelings because their FI is drawn to someone else's feelings, and for some reason, my feelings don't matter anymore. As an INTJ, I will always be an individual with my own thoughts and my own feelings. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, FI is something that I can't run from no matter how hard I try. The last INFJ is a very beautiful person, but I could tell very early on that my FI was being prioritized very early. And when I brought it up, it continued to be ignored. As an INTJ, I feel so much, but can vocally express so little. I need someone who not only is able to navigate through my logical TE demeanor, which is harsh, but also a person who can help me navigate my emotions. Something that the MBTI community doesn't talk about much is how easy it is for FE users to discard feelings if they don't think that it's the proper feeling to focus on at that moment. It brought up a lot of trauma in me, being raised around FE users, that my feelings don't matter. And I refuse to ever ignore my FI again. None of the INFJs were bad people. Our priorities were just not aligned. Therefore, our values didn't align. This video is getting long, so I'm going to end it. I'm 35 years old and I'm still single. And I'm pretty sure that in 5 years, I'm going to make another video about being single, but being a single INTJ dating at the age of 40. I'm not happy about it, but I'm okay with it. I mentioned a few things I learned about myself after a few breakups, but I want to end this video with the biggest thing that I learned about myself. Being single is lonely, and there are lots of lonely nights. But it's a blessing how comfortable I am being lonely, and that just because I'm lonely doesn't mean that I will rush into a relationship when I'm not ready. I know for a fact that the person I eventually end up with will be the strongest person that I know and is someone that I absolutely want to be with. That's the end of the scripted video, so I'm just going to talk about a few things that I believe are very important that I left on the video purposely because I don't know where it fits or because it just came to me while I was making this video. Something about dating that I always come back to, or I thought that I was coming back to, is, am I the problem? Like, am I the problem? And I don't think that's an INTJ thing. I think that's just a normal question. It's just, okay, if I consistently have a relationship and they consistently fail, then I've noticed a pattern that the pattern is that I'm in those relationships. Am I destined to be single forever? Because if so, I want God to give me a sign. I want like the clouds to be like, you're going to be single forever. I'm going to be like, God damn it. But thank you, God. I appreciate it. I'm not even a religious person, but if that happened, I will pray every day. The other thought that constantly gets recycled in my mind is whether I'm running away from something or whether I'm running towards something. Because why is it that I would meet a person and on paper they would be perfect, but I don't think they're perfect when I'm engaging with them? It doesn't make sense. You know, like, shout out to the ABGs, right? I dated the ABG before and she is fucking gorgeous, but I couldn't get past her. Like, our mental connection just didn't work out. I did interracially. I dated in different states. I dated up age and I dated down age and every single body type. And one thing remains true, and it's that I'm still single. I don't know what I'm getting at the end of this video. I do want to acknowledge that I'm aware that I might be the problem, and I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with being the problem because I will continuously seek a way to fix it, but I'm okay with not being the reason why someone doesn't find the right person. If I'm not ready for a relationship and that person is stuck with me, that's a worse feeling than being alone, because I will resent myself for that person. And I know it sounds very weird to do that, but it's It's something that I also consider. When I date someone, I want to make sure that I'm the best version of myself so that they get what they deserve. And if I feel like I'm not ready for a relationship, not necessarily that I'm not good enough for them, I won't put them in that situation. Or I will continue to ask them, are you sure you want this to happen? A lot of the times, the flame flickers off and we decide to go our separate ways. And I'm very much okay with that. But that is my video about dating. I know it's very high level because I didn't want to call anyone specifically, but I have a lot of crazy stories. I dated a lot of crazies. I swear to God, I dated a lot of crazies. But yeah, thanks for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. I hope whoever's watching this, you find your forever person. I would much rather you guys find your person than I find mine because, again, I'm okay with just being me and my cat. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.